Jeff at LinCo Diesel Performance, an LDP machine here. Today we're doing another Tech Tip Tuesday. This will be part 2 of our two-part series of degreeing camshaft and checking valve-to-piston clearance. So on part 1, which was up last week, we showed you how to properly set the degree wheel, locate TDC, and degree the camshaft, and went over the importance of that. Today we're going to do valve-to-piston clearance. But some of the steps in the first part, like locating TDC, very important steps that can't be skipped. So make sure you watch that one to get the basics to get to this point. As you see here, we got the head on, it's fully torqued, all the rockers are on. If this was something you're mocking up, you could just put number 1 on. That's what we would do. We've been playing with this thing for a day and a half and degreed the cam 3 or 4 times. So we know we're good. What we got is what we got. So that's why we have it set up this way. When you have all your rockers on, sometimes it can fight you with wanting to stay where you put your degree wheel, because the spring pressure can want to roll back. So it is easier to just have just number 1. And also, if you notice here, we have what are called test springs or dummy springs. These little lightweight springs. It's a lot more accurate. You can check valve-to-piston with your springs you're using. You will have to turn your adjuster screw, and you just got to be careful because you can get push rod deflection and get a false reading, but it can be done. If we're doing a proven setup and we expect it to be right, especially if we degree the cam, a lot of times we'll put it together that way knowing it should be good, so we're not wasting time. But we wanted to show you the proper way to do it and accurate, so that's why we have the test springs on. Okay, so for valve-to-piston, first off, as I said, you have to properly locate TDC using a piston stop or the Dwell method, and have your degree wheel set with the cylinder head off, preferably already degreed your cam. And then you can put your head on. You gotta have your push rods in, number 1, because we're checking on number 1. And you wanna start off with TDC on compression stroke. So we're on the back side of the cam and we can get our lash adjusted. I think where a lot of people go wrong is they set their lash to 10 and 20 or 12 and 12 in a Duramax, whatever they're doing, and then that's how they check valve-to-piston. But you gotta remember, the reason that you have lash is to compensate for the valves growing for heat. So ideally running under maximum operating temp, especially the hell we put these diesels through, you're gonna have little to no lash. That's why you put the lash in there. So you're expecting to have at least a little to no lash. So it's very important to check valve-to-piston with 0 lash or close to it. We normally do, a 0.5 thousandths to 2 thousandths, something measurable to know you have lash, and that's pretty realistic. But keep in mind, extreme circumstances, it likely could be 0 lash. So that's very important. So we're gonna go ahead and, again, TDC on compression. You can roll the engine over if you're not sure. Make sure that neither one of your push rods are moving, neither valves are trying to open, to verify that you are on compression. So you can check intake or exhaust first. I always check intake first because that way I'm set up near my exhaust valve, because that's where you're checking valve-to-piston first. So you can just make sure there's the lash is out of it, and 0 your indicator. Because it's a lot more accurate to use an indicator as opposed to feeler gauge for this. So then we want to rock it. And as you can see, I have 1,000, so that's perfect. And then move over to our exhaust. Always make sure you have it preloaded plenty and that you have travel. And you can see we've got, let's 0 it. So we've got about 2 thousandths. On these 12 valves, they got the dimple in the top and it can throw you off. So we're gonna go ahead and move it out here. Check this again, make sure we're being accurate. Okay, so we got 1, so we're good. Okay, so make sure that you have 0 to 2 thousandths lash. And then we're gonna roll the engine over clockwise to 10 degrees before TDC. So let's go ahead and turn our engine, watching the degree wheel. We're gonna come up with an exhaust stroke, and we're gonna catch the exhaust valve as it's closing, coming up, the piston coming up to TDC. Okay, so here we're coming up close. If you would pass it up, you gotta go back at least 30 degrees. So take your time, right there. And then when you have all the springs in like this, you always wanna watch your degree wheel and make sure the engine doesn't turn back, because a lot of times it will try to. So we're TDC, or 10 degrees before TDC, okay? And this is where we're gonna check our exhaust. So I always set up in the retainer, because you got to keep in mind your rocker arm is moving like this. So I like to set up on the retainer. And again, make sure you give it plenty of travel so you don't run out and get a false reading. Let's go to 0 indicator. And push the valve open. And we have 50 thousandths. So most people in the industry, the minimum you want is 50. So this is a 188 220 cam. You expect it to be pretty tight, and right at 50. So the exhaust is good, and again, 10 degrees before TDC. So the piston's traveling up and that exhaust valve is closing, so the piston's chasing the valve, and we're checking it 10 degrees before. Now we usually check them at 10 and 5, and a lot of times I'll even check TDC on intake and exhaust. That'll give you a little more broad of a range, especially if you're playing with the cam, if you're moving the cam, degreeing it. I like to do it that way. You might be surprised, you might see less than 20 thousandths at 5 or at TDC. So that's how we do it. But the rule of thumb is 10 degrees before and 10 degrees after. So now we're gonna move our engine to 10 degrees after TDC. Make sure it doesn't move, we're still on. 10 degrees after TDC. And now we're gonna set up on our intake valve. 0 our indicator, half a thou, we're okay. And we have 44. So we actually, we've got, 44. So 44 is a little tight. So this is the entire procedure for checking Valve-to-Piston. So now I want to kind of get a little more technical on degree and cams and Valve-to-Piston. So 44, that is a little tight. We'd like to see 50, but that's kind of figured on 10 thousandths lash on the intake. It's not uncommon at all in the diesel industry or any engine building to adjust your lash according to your build, to your clearance, to the usage of the engine, where you want your power. So on something like this, we got 50 on the exhaust, we're dead on. We'll probably set this lash at 22, and then tell the customer 20 to 24 for a range when you're servicing it. On the intake, we'll go to 14. That's not uncommon. A lot of people set the intake at 14. That'll build in 4,000 slash, so technically 4,000 square clearance. But also, when you loosen lash, you retard the valve timing a little bit. I think it's 2 thousandths is a degree, I think, is the rule of thumb, at least on performance gas engines. So by adding just a little bit more lash, in this case 4 thousandths, we're going to give it clearance, and we're going to build even more clearance because we're going to delay the opening of the intake valve. So don't be afraid to cater your lash, to your needs there. You wouldn't want to go 30 thousandths, but you can give it a couple thousandths is fine. That's a way to fine tune your cam timing, and that's a way to fine tune cam timing on intake and exhaust separately. So, so like I said, don't be afraid to do that. And then I wanted to get into a little more specifics on degreeing the camshaft. So the 12 valve, we covered in the first video that this is just a stock, used short block the customer brought us. So it hasn't been decked, it doesn't have reduced height pistons. We had 26 thousandths piston protrusion. So typically you're gonna be 14 to 25 when you're building one of these, depending on what pistons you're using. And we had 26, because again, the block hasn't been decked, it's full height pistons. It's a 188 220 cam, which is very common for 12 valves. It's the biggest drop-in cam you can get. So checking clearance and degreeing is very important. When we put the cam in the first time, we degreed it in the video. We were 97 3/4 on our center line. But when we checked intake opening and close, we were, I think, 1.5 degrees advanced. So advancing the cam is going to open the intake earlier, sooner. So as the piston's coming up, the intake valve is opening sooner. So you're going to lose clearance on a cam that's advanced. Retarding timing will delay the opening. That can bring your exhaust tighter, but it will delay the opening of the intake and get you more clearance. So at 97 3/4, so basically 98 degree center line, cam card says 99, so we're advanced 1 degree. We had, do you remember what we had, Gabe, on initially? I know we were tight. Let's see here. Again, I've talked before about keeping good notes. Every time we've checked this thing, it's written down. So we had 17. On the intake at 10, we had 17. So we pulled the cam out, we re-degreed it, wound up at 99. It had our intake opening dead on the cam card at 5 degrees. Checked it again, I think we were mid-30s if I'm not mistaken, so we were still tight. We actually pulled a different cam out of the box, thought maybe the cam lobe could be off just a little bit and making it tight, so we pulled an R cam out, put it in, degreed that one at 97, and it was very tight. So we threw another key in it and got it to 99.5. Basically, we were, I think on the timing on opening, we were 1.5 degrees retarded. So that's where we're at now. We're almost 100 degrees center line, 99 3/4 measured, and we've got 40 thousandths. So a lot of playing around with this cam to get our clearance dialed in, and we're still tight. So it's extremely important to not only degree the cam, but check your clearance. This has a 20 thousandths thicker head gasket too. So a lot of people are putting a standard or a 10 over, and this thing here would be tight as hell if we didn't have that 20 over head gasket in there. So very important. And also too, the camshafts, doesn't matter whose cam it is, there's a lot of variables with the camshaft. First off, on Cummins, it's common for the crank gear to slip a little bit on the dial. On all of our big builds, we key them to address that. Some people weld them. But if you're taking an old crank that's slipped a little bit and then you weld it, you're still locked in at that timing. So, the same camshafts with a standard key degreed about, when we degreed them, they're about 1 degree apart on center line. And then the one cam right out of the box with the standard key was 97, so it was advanced 2 degrees. That's not the cam, there's nothing wrong with the cam, the gear's probably moved. A lot of times you're swapping gear from different engine. So a lot of variables, which is why it's important to degree your cam and check valve-to-piston. And then valve-to-piston clearance can also indicate cam degree a lot of times. If your intake is tight, the cam is probably advanced. And vice versa, if your exhaust is tight and your intake's loose, you need to advance if the cam's retarded. So that should cover degreeing cam and valve-to-piston. As always, if anybody has any questions about something or comments, feel free to reach out to us at any time. Happy to help you out. And just people need to know the importance of this and make sure you're checking it. So a very critical step in an engine build, or even doing a build on your truck and you got the engine still in the chassis, you got a different head on there, you're changing the cam, very important. So don't skip out, and hopefully this helps you. Thanks.